Warren Buffett once told Michelle Reed, who was at one time the superintendent of public schools in Washington, D.C., which is where I was born. He said, there's one main way to fix the problem in the educational system in America. He said, make all the private schools in this country illegal, and then assign every child to a public school by random lottery. He said, there's no faster way to transfer financial resources from one side of the city to the other. See, when privilege that people have enjoyed for so long is placed in a tenuous scenario, all of a sudden people get it. All of a sudden we've got to do something about this. When your privilege is hanging in the balance, the thing we have to remember about the way that things are set up in this country is what is known as the golden rule. Now, to some, the golden rule means do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. America's already failed that. We're not talking about that. The golden rule that I'm talking about is the golden rule that says, he who has the gold rules. The golden rule. There will be no need to transfer resources from one side of the city to another if everyone had the same access to resources and support. For a long time it's been argued that poor black kids who typically don't perform as well as white kids is due to a genetic deficiency. Tell that to our ancestors that built the pyramids. Malcolm X said an elephant can't walk around good in Egypt without tripping over some white man with a shovel. I'm not in Europe digging up anything. But the golden rule, he who has the gold rules. The problem is, people like to categorize people in certain boxes because they're squares. Naturally, a square would fit in a box. So when you place people in a certain box, then you say, oh, it's a genetic deficiency. What they fail to realize is what helps them to excel is the environmental influences that they enjoy, called privilege. Environmental influences should not be separated from genetic influences, unless you're a moron. There's a lot of them in this country. The golden rule, he who has the gold rules. There's another aspect I want you to consider. It is called the 90-10 rule. Now, a lot of people have heard of the 80-20 rule, but I'm talking about the 90-10 rule. What is the 90-10 rule? The 90-10 rule is that 90% of the populace is controlled by 10%. The richest 1% controls over half the wealth. Is that so hard to believe? What we are taught in school is to be a part of the 90%. The rats that run in a wheel to keep the wheel turning. The only difference between an upper middle class person and a poor person is that the upper middle class person is running faster. You say, well, no, wouldn't the poor run faster? No, because the more you make, the more taxes your pimp named Uncle Sam takes. Remember, it's your tax dollars, upper middle class folks, that take care of the poor. Psych your mind. What is lacking in our school systems? Why is it that in Asia, the average Asian saves and invests between 30 to 35% of his income, and the average American, as arrogant as they are, only 2%? Arrogance is only overcompensation. It's not confidence. We have a lot of snotty-nosed grown people, kids, in this country who are arrogant. For what reason, I don't know, but they're arrogant primarily to overcompensate for the 33% of their income that they blow on bullshit. To 35% of the average Asian's income he saves and invests versus the average American. Why is that? Because Asians place a higher value on education. So even if you go to a privileged white school, you're still getting taught to be a robot. You're still being taught to be in the 90%. The more you make, the more taxes they take. Silly rabbit. And of the 28 leading educational systems and countries, of the 28 leading educational systems and countries in the world, guess where America falls? As arrogant as you are, 23rd. That's piss poor. No wonder you're so arrogant, because you have to overcompensate for the 22 countries that's ahead of you. It's sad that in this country, your degree of education and knowledge is based upon the amount of property taxes that your parents pay. I know. I'm a black man, but I went to a good high school. In fact, the high school that I graduated from was ranked 3rd academically in Ohio. My parents made that sacrifice for me. So what is the answer? Not every child is going to go to college and finish. Ask Bill Gates. But that doesn't mean that they can't be financially well-to-do. The part that's lacking in education is the education about money. What is education? The true mark of education is to teach the student to be a responsible handler of power. Say it with me. The true mark of education is to teach the student to be a responsible handler of power. When you're in the 90 percentile rate, you don't have any power. And the truth of the matter in this country is that unless you got $1 million plus to play with in the marketplace, you don't have a vote. The whole system was created by the wealthy. Have you ever heard of the General Education Board? I would tell you, do some research. It was passed in 1903 by a rich man named Rockefeller. That's the reason why you don't understand money. Go check that out. So, what's the answer? The number one thing kids need to learn is about money. They need to understand the difference between buying time and selling time. You pay a mortgage, so you're still a part of the 90 percentile rate, even if your house is valued at over $1 million. And white people in this country are not in the establishment. They identify with the establishment. So, one of the things that I suggest is a 1-hour lecture that I have on CD entitled Paper Chasing. Paper Chasing. If you want me to say it without ebonics, because you're slow, paper chasing. Paper chasing. And the point of this lecture is to teach urbanized minority students about money. Now, if you got an open mind, anybody can learn it. And the truth of the matter is most adults actually need to get the CD. But I designed it for young, black, or minority students in school. Because generally we do speak a different language. But don't mock the language that we speak, as you might call ebonics. Because more and more, every time I turn the television on, I hear white people biting off of what we create. Get your new Sprint PC phone and you'll be good to go. We don't say that anymore. By the time you get something, we don't even say that anymore. It's played. Black people create something and drop it off and go start something else, like rock and roll. Ask Chuck Berry and Little Richard. 1-hour lecture on CD entitled Paper Chasing, and I'm talking about money. The subject of money, the information that you're not getting in school. CDs are $9.99, free shipping. My number is 216-630-8843.